I'm super excited for our next speaker for you guys, and very appreciative of your time. Dennis, are you on? I should be able to unmute you, I think. There you go.
There we go. Yes, I am. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I think this is such an awesome value that you're providing to everybody. And it looks like from Facebook, you had opened this up to anybody. I just think that's amazing. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we really kind of feel like no matter what company you're with, everybody needs to come together right now, right? We're all in this real estate game together. So I was super thankful to have you on to talk about our next shift tactic, which is tactic number 10, expand the options with creative financing, and kind of wanted to do a two-part with you. I'd love if you could share a little bit about that. And then also I'd love to get you to share about Keller Mortgage and just kind of the 0+ loan for we have a lot of people asking questions about that yesterday. But before we do that, will you tell them a little bit about yourself, just your background and anything that they would need to know about you?
Sure. I'll be quick on that, but I've been in the real estate business for 16 years. I started out actually as an investor, and my agent was, who ended up being my sponsor, was a Keller Williams agent. He and I were good friends from church, and that's how I ended up at Keller Williams. I was an agent in the Arlington Market Center. My first year was 2009. I went through real estate school in October of 2008. Which was right in the middle of the last shift. So really, I cut my teeth in one of the worst markets we'd ever seen. And that was great for me because my mentality was, if I could learn how to sell real estate in a shift, I could sell real estate at any time. And so I was super grateful just actually to go through that. And had a great first year. I was runner-up international rookie of the year for Keller Williams in 2009. And took everything that you're talking about in this book, and this literally was my playbook. So I built a team. I was team leader in Arlington for the Arlington Market Center, and I was in leadership there for 5 years. And then I was in a regional leadership role as well for North Texas, New Mexico, Memphis, and I'm full-time actually back investing and in production with my real estate team out of the Arlington Market Center. So
awesome. Good for you. Man, you are like several people, the people we've had on multiple roles with lots of experience. So that is awesome. So talk to us a little bit about the tactic 10 and expanding the options. I know we feel that at different times, and I think we're getting a lot of questions around that right now in particular. So what are your thoughts? Where do you want to kick us off with?
Well, I've got a few points to kind of sum up this chapter. And actually, I wanted to read a quote. This is a great book, by the way. I would recommend. It's called Tough Times Never Last, But Tough People Do.
Ooh, love that.
By Robert Schuller. This is an excellent book.
I've actually never read that.
Oh, yeah, this is a must read. If you read it, you'll think you're reading a book that was written during all of this. But yeah, tough times never last, but tough people do. And there's a quote in here that just goes great with expanding the options. He says, when you've exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't. And I think that's just important to understand, especially, what we're looking at. So this chapter, Tactic 10, is expand the options, creative financing. In the last shift in 2009, I had to sell twice as many homes as we closed. So I think that particular year, I put about 75, 76 under contract, and only 35 of them closed. Wow. So we were doing literally double the work for every closing that we had that particular year. And so we had to get creative, and we couldn't, we couldn't just take no for an answer, I guess you could say back then. Yeah. So creative financing looks like a lot of different things. I think a lot of people think they go straight to, well, that's just seller financing or something that, most would think is illegal or something like that. And it's not. There's a lot of, we're just talking about here, all the different options. And so kind of my first point that I wanted to talk about with this is we have to get past just the low-hanging fruit in a shift. I think when the market's good, it's easy to just take the people that are, super qualified and then put everybody else to the side. But I think that, like I said with that quote, we can't take no, whether it's from a lender or whatever it is, as just as an answer. We can't let that stop us from searching for more options. And in fact, in a shift, when you go from a seller's market like we've been in, and let's say we switch now into a buyer's market, more than ever, our job is to help bring buyers to the market. Right. And so I think that's kind of the first just kind of mindset with this is that fact. One of the things he says in the Shift book, he says affordability is the juice that makes the market go or stop. Mm-hmm. So when it's up, the market goes up. When it's down, the market goes down. And Kelly mentioned something in the last interview that you were doing, and she was talking about how buyers, obviously are, they're focused on payment. And I think it's a very important thing to remember that sellers are their focus is on net and on price, and buyers are more concerned with terms and payment. Yeah. I told my team yesterday, I said, look, if someone's going to buy a house and they're going to live in it for the average 7 to 8 years, value is not really even an issue right now. The question is, does the payment make sense? Is this where they want to live? Does the house fit the needs for their situation? And if so, great. Well, let's keep moving forward. So point number 2 I want to go into is just one is now knowing what are our options. In the Shift book, you can see, I'll tell you what page it is. On page 200 in Shift, he goes through 3 areas of creative financing. And so there's things that actually this getting a deal closed becomes a team effort at this point. So there's things the seller can do in market, there's things the buyers can do, and there's things that the lenders can do. So we kind of all working together. And so even down to things like, let's look at kind of a couple pieces here. Seller contributions makes a huge difference now, right? Whereas before, I think everything was price driven, but even a seller being able to do contributions to help maybe it's not closing costs. We're going to talk about Keller Mortgage in one way on how to obviously keep the out of pocket down. But then, it's like, okay, well, we don't need to ask for seller contributions, but you could ask for seller contributions that could go towards buying down an interest rate, right? Yep. Getting that payment down even lower to make it work for that buyer. And so there's a couple interesting things here. And I think obviously, reading this chapter, there's everything from, you've got owner financing, you've got some different things that I think are going to start becoming more relevant as buyers maybe have challenges with credit, challenges being able to qualify. We went from, in the last shift, everything went from anyone can buy a house to hardly anybody could qualify for a mortgage. Yeah. And I don't know that we're going to totally get there again. However, I think if it does, this chapter actually becomes super crucial on that.
Yeah, it really does.
So here's another interesting, because we've even done some things this year and last year with my team that would still be creative. I talked to a lender 2 weeks ago, that's doing bank statement loans for self-employed people or things like that. These are some really cool. That is
for somebody who may not know.
So a bank statement loan, if you're, for someone who's maybe self-employed, and we're obviously, when you own a company, you want to try to keep your tax liability as low as possible. And so what shows up on your tax return and actually money that someone has to spend, are 2 separate things. And so what they're doing is they're funding loans just based on how much income came into the bank account. Yep. Versus on that. And the interest rate, if someone had still good credit, what was interesting was their interest rate was maybe a 1/4 point, maybe 0.5% higher than a traditional conventional loan. And I thought that was just fantastic. Yeah. Another new thing that, and not new, but something that I think is going to become very crucial in the coming months as people are still wondering if they're going to have a job and all of that through all of this. I have one lender who is offering, it's like payment insurance. And again, this is just knowing what your options are. So their particular program, it was only, the lender was going to pay for it. It's like $120 cost to the lender at closing. But what happens is if that person gets laid off from their job in the first 2 years after they close on that loan, anytime in that 2 years, they will cover the mortgage payment for 6 months up to $1,500 a month. And so if someone loses their job, for example, their mortgage is $2,000 a month, this payment insurance will kick in and pay $1,500. So now their liability went from $2,000 to $500.
Wow.
For 6 months. That's enough time for them to get back on their feet, get things going, and all of that. Now, if they get fired because they did something wrong, that's different. But if it's a layoff type situation, like we've been seeing with the virus layoffs and everybody's had, this is something there. So if someone says, well, I don't want to take the risk right now because I'm concerned I might lose my job. Well, the reality is everyone's going to have to live somewhere, right? Whether you're renting or you're buying. So I would ask your lender about payment insurance. Do you have a program like that? And they tack this on to FHA loans, conventional loans, VA loans, doesn't really matter. And so again, it's just knowing your options with that. And then the last thing I'll mention, so one's just knowing your options. Start asking your lender. Gary talks about in this chapter, he says you should have a time block time every couple weeks to talk with your lenders about what's happening with rates, what's happening with new programs you're hearing about, down payment assistance, all of these different things, just so you know what's going on. And here's what he says in the book. He says any combination of this stuff works. There's 3 things we got to look out for. One, is it legal? Just because an attorney writes something, by the way, doesn't make it legal. So you still want to make sure that some of this stuff that it's legal. The second thing is all 3 parties agree, the lender, the buyer, the seller, everybody's on the same page, and then everything gets properly disclosed. So if a seller owns a home free and clear, they can do seller financing, and there's a lot of those options, out there. And I think we're going to start needing to get back into that. And
Dennis, we actually just had a question on that from one of the participants. Do you think leasing with the right to purchase is the best way to go for now, since sellers and buyers are uncertain what to do at this time? Do you think it would help people move forward and buy when this is all over?
That's a great question. And I think that it's going to depend on whatever legally they can do, so contracts couldn't be dated out, at least in Texas, I know, for longer than 180 days. And so doing a lease purchase may or may not be a legal option on there. Now, you could have the conversation of just leasing and obviously buying whenever it's all done. But I think depending on what happens with the laws on that, that could be. But I think that they're going to, one of the best scripts I've ever heard through all of years when we're talking about is now a good time to buy. The answer is always, to me, is yes, because I know what the market is. And this was straight from Gary Keller. I know what the market is today. I don't know what the market is in 6 months or 12 months from now. So when they're saying, should we wait it out? The question is, okay, does this payment make sense? Does this home fit your needs? And if it does, I don't, Dana, see a reason to wait.
Yep. I agree with that as well.
And so now here's the thing. You don't have to be a master in this. Gary says in this chapter, he says, you don't have to go out and add this to your list to be a master creative financer. He says you need to understand the market. You need to know the players that are out there, right? So really build a team. You can have multiple options. I've got multiple lenders. We use Keller Mortgage a lot. We've been using Keller Mortgage. We were the first market outside of Austin to have Keller Mortgage. I was one of the first people to close with Keller Mortgage, and we'll segue into that here in just a second. But it's been fantastic. But we also have Plan B, Plan C, Plan D lenders as well that maybe offer the down payment assistance or something where we have a buyer that needs a little bit more help on that. And so just know the players that are out there, who's offering what. And then it's very easy with social media to just say, hey, who's offering special financing? You get that out there and you'll have 100 people commenting with different lenders and options. There's private money. Some of that may be on pause for a little bit. However, there's a lot of options there. And then my last point, and then we can talk Keller Mortgage, because I know we're limited on time, but is to just communicate this and don't stop lead generating. I heard Kelly talking about for sale by owners. I was on the phone with for sale by owners yesterday, and the conversations were as normal as they ever were. I mean, the emotions were a little bit different, but nobody said, hey, you're insensitive to be lead generating. If there's people and they're trying to sell their home, our value, we just became, and you said this earlier, more valuable than ever. I even had a FSBO. I was a day late calling them, and they said, we listed the house Saturday. We signed a listing agreement Sunday with somebody, because they weren't on the market yet, but they said, we just figured with everything going on, we're going to need professional help. And I thought,
wow.
Right.
I think we're going to see, we already are, obviously, from your story and from others that we're hearing, but we're going to see that so much more over the next couple of weeks, because people are, for sale by owners, I always kind of love during a shift that they realize, they self-discover that they can't do it by themselves anymore.
Right. Yeah, real estate agents in the shift have a struggle selling listings, and so they really, don't have it. And so, and you think about it, it's even, and I'm always gracious when they say, well, we've I've done this before, and in my head, I'm thinking, okay, you've sold one or two. Sometimes they're like, I've sold 4 houses on my own. And in my head, I don't always say this to them, but I want you to take this mentality that does not qualify them, because they probably would not hire an agent that's only sold 4 houses.
That's very true. That's the best point, Dennis. I love that point. Actually, also, Joe Gothard, an agent, just texted me and said, this is a great option to purchase with a delayed closing, gets the buyer in the buying mode versus a rental mode where they feel that they can get out. And that's a really great point, Joe. Thanks for saying that.
That's awesome. Absolutely.
So, okay, we have like 2-3 minutes left, and I really want you to touch on Keller Mortgage and 0+ loans, because I think there's a lot of questions around, I love my lender, and what if I'm not a KW agent, and all of those types of things. And this is just one option, and it's a great option, especially for what we're going into. So if you could just take a couple minutes and share, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Well, if you are KW, one of the great resources is if you go to the Pivot website and scroll down to Pivot Partners, there's a big red box, and that's Keller Mortgage. There's scripts, social media posts, personalized landing pages for every agent to market, which we'll talk about saving money for their clients. The 0+ loan, if you're not KW, here's how this works. So there's 0 lender fees, none, no doc prep fees, no underwriting fees, none of that, no origination fees, and then it's they get $1,000 credit back at closing. The other thing that I think is so huge is that they order the appraisal day 1 of the contract. They don't wait till after the option period. And the buyer's only responsible to pay for 1 appraisal. So even if the deal falls through and we have to put it, they got to go back out and do it again, they're not going to get charged for 2 appraisals. But that gets all the uncertainty out of the way in the first 7 to 10 days. Now, this works if a buyer is working with a Keller Williams agent, or if a buyer is buying a Keller Williams listing, even if the buyer's agent is with a different brokerage, they can qualify. So the portal that they would go to is portal.kellermortgage.com, and agents can pick their own loan officers. They can check status of their deals on there, and then also there's scripts and training videos and all that. But that's where you would go to refer a client from there. And so there's also, I'll mention this, Dana, just on resources. There's a Keller Mortgage Mastermind Facebook group that they would want. It's a great place to share ideas. A lot of people have had strategies in how they're using that. And Keller Mortgage is all virtual. So it's kind of like been ready. In fact, I was talking with Holly Serbin and Smokey on this, and they've had one of their best months ever. Business has not slowed down at all, and they are ready to roll. So I will say this, Dana, we had a deal that just got delayed because they were with a smaller mortgage, and their lines of credit got dried up because they weren't able to move the loans that they just did as fast, whether that was Fannie or Freddie or whatever that was going on with that. And so right now, having a big well-funded lender is huge, because they basically said, we can't fund anything till we get these other loans off our books. And, we're delayed because they've dried up all their money. And that is not what you want right now.
Yeah, I heard that was happening with some Quicken loans right now too. Someone mentioned that earlier, and actually somebody texted me that too. So okay. So what would you say to somebody that it says, maybe I've worked with my lender forever, and they give me advertising money and all of those other things or whatever that's like? What would your response be to that?
If they're looking at, okay, I want to start using Keller Mortgage and that, I don't think you have to go all in with just one person. I think it's okay to have options. I think our fiduciary responsibility is to give options to the client. But if we know there's something like this that can save them money, and literally all they're having to bring to closing is prepaids, insurance and things like that, I think we owe it to our clients to let them know that. So I don't think it's like we say no to everything on that. But it's very important right now to get deals closed. I had somebody that told me one time, they said, well, I didn't do this buyer consultation because the lender couldn't come in person, because they were like, I do all my buyer consults with a lender there. And I said, do you think that lender is saying no to business if you couldn't show up? Like, no, they're not doing that. So I think you just need to have a lot of different things in your tool belt. And this is one of those things that absolutely, especially if cash is tight right now, your offers are going to be more competitive by being able to say, we're not having to ask for as much closing cost because we have Keller Mortgage. So your offers right now, we lost out on an offer yesterday. It was a lower price range, but there were 10 other offers on this property yesterday, which I told my team this morning in our huddle, our Zoom huddle. I said, what does that tell you? There are buyers out there like crazy, and it's still competitive. So this is a way to put us in a very competitive position. I think we owe it to our clients to do that, Dana.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay, I know we're past, but I have a couple quick questions. People are just for clarification, when using Keller Mortgage, the transaction has to include a Keller Williams agent on one side, either the buying or selling side. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, and then do you know how they're selecting loan originators to work with?
So you can pick your own loan originator, which is awesome. So you can have a preferred one that gets saved. And so you go in there, you select your LO, and that LO is the one that will connect with them, which is awesome. Okay. So you don't have to, it's not random LOs like it was, before.
Yep. Okay. Do they charge a VA funding fee?
That's a great question. I would reach out to them. I do not believe that they do. Every closing statement I've seen, and for VA people, everything is zeroed out. So there are some fees that from what I understand, they've paid, and they're covering all of that stuff. So I'd reach out though and just ask an LO on that.
And then we got a lot of questions coming in. Is it true that if an outside co-op agent are in a transaction with a KW agent, their client can use Keller Mortgage?
That is true. Yes.
Awesome.
And we've saved a lot of deals that way. Something, didn't, like we had to get back in or whatever it was. We have flipped deals on that, and it's saved deals that way. So.
Yep. Okay. And then, Dennis, let's see, 2 quick more. Does Keller Mortgage do refinancing?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yes.
And it's free. And so anyone in your database, that's a great touch. Get out there and say, hey, you can refinance your home with 0 lender fees. And and the $1,000 credit, the whole thing is still done. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then last question. That's a great idea, by the way, for just as a care call touch right now too.
Great care call. Yeah.
Is payment insurance a common offering?
I've not seen that around much, but I've also hadn't really needed it or asked. And so it was something a particular loan officer with a different company had mentioned to us way before this whole pandemic stuff started happening. And then he brought it back up again the other day and said, hey, don't forget we can do this. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. So I would just ask. I'm sure it's not their product. It's probably a third party that they're paying to do that. So in fact, I know it's a third party. So I would just ask your loan officer. And if they don't know, ask them to go see if they can find out.
Yep. Awesome. Dennis, this has been super helpful. Thank you for your time. Are you quarantined right now?
We are, yes, but we're considered essential business where we are. And so we're still able to get out and do that.
Good.
And I'm in Arlington, Texas, Dan, but my email, if anyone does want to reach out with anything.
That was my next question. How do people find you?
Yeah, so they can, our Facebook is just at Dennis Tuttle Team. And my email is dennistuttle@kw.com is the best way to reach me. And yeah, I'm happy to help on anything that I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis. Thanks for your time. Stay safe and healthy, and I appreciate you.